All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our first off tour all employee town hall meeting. And so this is something we're going to be starting to do quarterly, in addition to the regular town hall meetings that we do monthly. And so we're going to play with the time a little bit to figure out what the optimal time is to make sure that we hit the most people that we can. I also want to say hello to those that have joined us on Teams, as well as those that are in the room. We haven't done an all-employee town hall meeting in person in a very long time, so this is actually pretty exciting. One of the things I also want to mention is that previously we used to do service awards at our all-employee town hall meetings in a PowerPoint. Because of the pandemic, we weren't able to continue our tradition of celebrating in quarterly in person. So we're going to be going back to that beginning with the first quarter of FY24. As we usually have our format for our town hall meetings, we will begin with a safety story. But before we go there, I want to just mention that this is a pretty special town hall meeting because we are joined by special guests. And so I want to first begin with our congressional member, Mr. Mark Takano, who is the ranking member of our House Veterans Affairs Committee. And my third line supervisor, the Undersecretary for Health, Dr. Sharif El-Nahal. Welcome. And my first line supervisor, the interim acting network director for Vision 22, Dr. Steve Braverman. Welcome, and we're so glad that they're here. They spent the whole day with us beginning at 7:30 this morning, and they've had an opportunity to talk to many staff. Dr. El-Nahal actually arrived yesterday afternoon and visited with two of our inpatients, and got to hear about all the great work that we do here in Loma Linda. So let's go ahead and begin with Andrea Hargrove and our patient safety story. Andrea.
Hey, Mr. Strawn, this is Steve. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes, I can hear you, Steve. Thank you.
All right. I'll be presenting on behalf of Miss Hargrove. She actually was called in to help with an OR case, and this is a OR safety story that I'll be sharing. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of the context, and she actually, I met with her to get a little bit more details on this. So I'd actually like to read some of the information she provided. So she says here, as the operating room circulating RN, part of our duties includes ensuring all the criteria for surgical readiness are completed. This consists of documentation in CPRS correctly reflects the surgical procedure the patient is scheduled to undergo. These components are the actual surgery request, the surgical history and physical H&P, the consent, the attending decision for surgery, the 24-hour history and physical update are all in place. On this particular day, the patient was scheduled for a major head and neck surgery related to some cancer with a tissue flap reconstruction. The consent specified the site where the flap would be harvested. During the circulating RN perioperative interview, the patient verbalized good understanding of his surgical procedure and physically indicated the site of the donor tissue flap, which matched the consent. The site was also marked. The patient was then taken to the OR suite and the surgical preparation ensued. After the patient was already under general anesthesia and intubated, the attending surgeon entered the OR suite and began to use a Doppler device marking the pen on a site that was not included in the consent. The RN immediately informed the surgeon he could not proceed with this unless an additional consent was obtained from a family member, as the patient now lacked decision-making capacity since he was under general anesthesia. The family member named on the patient's Veterans Advance Directive was identified and called. A new consent was obtained and the surgery commenced. And so this was a great example of a RN duty to speak up and stopping the line. This was commit to zero harm. The actions of our OR-RN prevented a surgical procedure from being completed on a patient without the correct identified consent. And so the HRO principles that were identified here were sensitivity to operations. This was a culture of safety pillar and our value to commit to zero harm. And so I wanted to share that from Ms. Andrea Hargrove. Since I've had the opportunity to work in a chief position for the past year or two, almost on a daily basis, I've been able to encounter different members of our multidisciplinary team that have felt that safety to come to speak up, to address concerns brought to us, and have felt that it's a safe environment for them to do so. So I appreciate Ms. Hargrove's willingness and dedication to stopping the line and the safety to commit zero harm. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. So one of the things I want to mention is that when we have near misses, when we have potential errors, when we have patient safety concerns that come forward, one of the ways to report that is through our joint patient safety reports. And over the last several years, we've seen an increase in the number of reports, and that's a great thing. Because in addition to the jobs that we're hired for, we're all safety managers. And so we have the duty to speak up. You're empowered to stop the line if need be. And every morning at our enterprise huddle at 9 o'clock, when we go over operations from the last 24 hours or updates from the last 24 hours, we hear about every single JPSR that was entered in the system to ensure that we do timely follow-up with every patient safety report. I also want to just mention that how important it is that every employee has the ability to share concerns. And so whether that's talking to your supervisor, whether that's talking to HR, whether that's talking to our compliance officer or our harassment prevention program coordinator or EEO or the Office of Accountability or Whistleblower Protection inside the organization or outside, we want you to feel psychologically safe at work. And I can tell you that it's so important that we follow the process because everything that we report actually gets investigated. So it doesn't always end with us knowing what happens, but making sure that we have avenues to report because we are all accountable to each other. And as much as employees are accountable for to their supervisors, and I jokingly said that Dr. Ellenhall is my third line supervisor, supervisors are also accountable to employees. So if you have a need, you let your supervisor know because they're accountable for removing barriers and making sure you have the resources to provide your job or to provide resources to do your job safely, effectively, with great quality and excellent customer service. One of the things that I also want to remind folks is that every Thursday at 10 a.m., I have the opportunity to meet with any employee in the organization at 10 a.m. It's called Dialogue with the Director. And so if any employee does want to speak with me directly as the medical center director, I have time set aside. You can reach out to anybody in the director's office to set up time. I recognize that after 4:30, leadership may not be around. So I want to make sure that you still have access to us. So if you're not able to meet with me on a Thursday at 10 a.m., send me a message directly. I will make the time. I live fairly close by, and I'm happy to come in and talk to you about your concerns and issues because what's important to you is important to me. With that, I also, before I bring up Dr. Sechrest to talk a little bit about access, I just want to talk a little bit about the journey we've been on in Loma Linda for the last 4 years. So when I started as director in March of 2019, we were a one-star facility when it came to quality. And I'm so proud of the progress that we made in the first 18 months. We went from a 1-star to a 2-star. And just last week, when the CMS star ratings were released for quality and safety for our medical center, we're a 4-star facility. That is awesome. And that is the effort of all 3,400 employees. It's your achievement. So I want to thank you for your commitment to improvement in our healthcare system and building trust and confidence of our veterans in our healthcare system. And we're for the first time being compared to our private sector counterparts. And Loma Linda University, who's a great academic affiliate, a world-renowned medical institution, is also a 4-star facility. So we are as good as the private sector facilities within our catchment area. And with that, I'm going to bring up Dr. Sechrest to talk a little bit about where we've been with access, specifically primary care and specialty care. Dr. Sechrest.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah, it is a big deal. 4 stars and soon to be 5, no question about it. What a great day. It has been an extraordinary day. I just want to pause and reflect for just one moment. I've had the opportunity, along with my colleagues, to be be about the facility with our excellent guests, Congressman Takano, Undersecretary Elma Hall, and Dr. Braverman. And one of the benefits of being in the mix is today I have seen the best of VA Loma Linda on display. I am incredibly proud and inspired by what I've seen today. Not that I didn't know it, but it was great to see it again. And we have what I consider to be a fabulous healthcare system. We have the best. We have the best care. We have the best people. We have the best patients. We have the best mission. But if you can't get in, if you can't get access to that, it doesn't mean anything, which is why you're always hearing me talk about access, access, access. If you can't get in, what does it matter? So what do I have to tell you today? We have made a phenomenal progress in terms of access to care. We have followed suit with Dr. Ellen Hall's strategic priority, getting veterans the soonest, best care. We have taken that to heart. It is our priority, and we have engaged in a passionate way. And as I said earlier today, we are struggling every day, striving to get the greatest good to the greatest number and the greatest need, and we are growing in the process. I know every clinical service is invested. They're looking at tools they can use, open slot management. They're looking at programmatic data. What are the wait times? What are the cancellation rates? What are the vacancy rates? How do we need to staff up? Everyone's doing everything they can to make that access a reality. And we have seen incredible results. And I'll touch on those momentarily. But for the past fiscal year, I was looking at the data with my GPMs earlier today. We've seen, in terms of new patient encounters, 54,000 new patient encounters, very comparable to our five-star neighbor to the west, LA. Okay. And of those 54,000, 60% of the time, we're seeing those patients within 20 days, Mission X standards. Within 28 days, we're seeing 70%. We see our established patients, about 400,000 this year, within 20 or 28 days, 90% of the time. So that's really the idea, is get them in sooner. If a veteran wants to be seen, I want to see him. And so we've made tremendous progress in that regard. And we're growing as a healthcare system. We're going to create access in other ways. You know, we have 5 CBOCs. We're going to open 5 more. But they're going to be 5 VA-owned and operated mini CBOCs with 2 to 3 PAC teams and other services like optometry. They're going to be very valuable to our patients. We're partnering with the U.S. Navy. I myself had talked with members of Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton and 29 Palms. They want to partner with us with a resource sharing agreement to see our patients, and we want to see theirs. Another option for our veterans. We're putting up a PAC team in our Blythe clinic. Blythe has always been telehealth, but now we know from experience, sending a mobile PAC out there, that a primary care team can deliver great benefits to our patients. What are some bright spots? If I had to give some bright spots in terms of creating access to care, I think about primary care. The enormous amount of resources that have been poured into primary care. One of the access measures that the VA uses is called third next available. It's a way to calculate when a veteran can be seen the third next available appointment. A year ago, that number was 90 days. Most recently, it was closer to 17 days. Just a precipitous drop because of the amount of effort, attention, and resources poured into that. Of my surgical services, we have 12 surgical specialties. Only three of them have wait times more than 28 days. Our ER is one of the most efficient in the VISN. Our wait times are far less than other facilities in our neighboring areas. And part of that is because of dedication of our leadership and the combination of our ED service with our inpatient service. Instead of fighting to get patients, they're now rolling in the same boat and they're moving patients through with more efficiency than ever. Incredibly proud. And finally, community care is with us. It is an important option that we have for our veterans. Community care is growing. We all know that. And we put a lot of resources into making sure when veterans need community care, we help their access as well. And by increasing staff, by adding great leadership and a lot of great processes, now those wait times when veterans have a consult for community care, they're being touched within 2 days, 98% of the time. And from the file entry date to the scheduling, those dates are dropping as well. So we know we're making progress. We are getting the greatest good, the greatest number, the greatest need, and we're growing. And thank you all for your part in that. That's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Sechrest. All right. Real quick, earlier today at the first town hall meeting, I shared a letter that was received by one of our patients just to underscore some of the great work that's happening in primary care. But it really is reflective of our entire organization because we provide great care. It's a matter of just getting our patients in the door and getting them an appointment. And so this is what was written to me. Dear Mr. Saran, My name is Francis. I'm a Vietnam veteran and I enrolled with the VA in 2000 at the Mather VA Medical Center, Rancho Cordova, California. I've moved around and had the good fortune to receive treatment at several VAMCs. I have been treated at Mather, Spokane, Seattle, Las Vegas, and now VA Loma Linda. I don't mean to bore you with all my travels. I don't write letters or fill out surveys. It's apparent that I have been treated by a substantial number of VA medical staff. My first primary care doctor was terrible. I requested and received another doctor. The point I want to make is that the Jerry L. Pettis VA Medical Center has been the best VAMC. Thank you for what you do for us vets. I appreciate all the top tier treatment that I receive here at VAMC and ACC. The reason for this letter is I want to bring to your attention the best doctor I have had in the VA. I received a phone call from him yesterday, July 1st, a Saturday, from my primary care doctor, Dr. Marvin Lee, regarding an irregularity on my recent x-ray. Dr. Lee is very thorough. I never had a doctor call me on a Saturday to discuss my medical conditions. Dr. Lee doesn't hesitate to refer me to a clinic, order labs and x-rays as needed. The best thing about Dr. Lee is the office visit. He's a very good listener and makes me comfortable when discussing sensitive issues. Dr. Lee does a thorough review of my medical conditions and takes the time to discuss them. I once had a primary care physician that set a timer for 20 minutes for the visit every 18 months. Dr. Lee undoubtedly is the best physician I've had at the VA. Once again, I appreciate all that you and the doctors, nurses, PAs, and everyone else that makes Loma Linda the best. Because I don't fill out surveys or write letters, this letter is an exception. But it's important to me that Dr. Lee is acknowledged for all he does for us veterans. And that's just one example of what we all strive for in this organization. And I know that a majority of you here today in the room and online provide care to our inpatients and to our emergency department veterans. And when they are in front of you, you're delivering that same kind of care. This is just one example of all the efforts of 3,400 employees. So thank you very much for that. All right, up next we have Dr. Elnahal, our Undersecretary for Health, to provide a few remarks, and then we're going to go right into a coin ceremony to recognize some of our peers, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Dr. Elnahal.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Good to see you. I want to just first give a special shout out to the later and evening staff at hospitals and medical centers. Special shout out to you guys. It's been my experience since being a medical student and an intern that hospitals can be completely different places at night. And you're all taking care of vets when, overall we're not as well staffed at night. The support isn't as good by definition, just because the number of people we can possibly staff at these hours. And so you're really appreciated. And thanks for taking some time to come as well. So in some cases before your shift starts, which means a lot to me. I want to thank Ranking Member Takano for joining me today. He's well known in these parts. He's well known to many of you, but he's particularly well known to the veteran community here. And that came through loud and clear with really an excellent veteran roundtable that we just had. He's concerned first and foremost about the veterans in this community, but also has helped me and the secretary and the president impact veterans across the country with your role in the committee, Congressman. So round of applause for him being here. Thank you. I also want to thank Dr. Braverman. Dr. Braverman, I've worked with you now for about a year since I've been here essentially. And, can't think of a more experienced, but also just compassionate and dedicated, focused leader over this entire region. He used to be your neighbor at Greater Los Angeles and is now focused on the entire region in Vision 22. So a round of applause for Dr. Braverman. And then Director Sorrell, I've got first time I met you, Director, was at ACHE, I believe, which was a few months ago. But I really got to know you during this visit, and I'm just impressed with the culture that you're trying to set here, the fact that you explicitly make time and openness for the front line, but also for managers and supervisors to come in with dedicated open houses and sessions to hear directly from folks. Your embrace of HRO means a lot to me. Your embrace of our priorities on behalf of veterans. And so you should know that I've gotten very positive feedback from many stakeholders, many of you, many of the leaders in this organization, but also veterans who've been treated here. So round of applause for your director and his. And then, of course, the entire ELT, what a dedicated, impressive group of people who want nothing but to make this place better and better. My team from DC, Congressman Takano, staff, and really just everybody who presented to me today. Heard everything from what you're doing in primary care to caregivers to really just amazing, groundbreaking research that's happening in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy for PTSD. It's just one example of a lot of the really impactful and important research. And, you know, your collaboration with Loma Linda University Medical Center comes through in the academic culture here. But I know that we're driving the excellence for veterans here at VA, and that starts with all of you in this room and on the call. So just a really extraordinary team here. I want to start by talking about where we are here in the year, which is really on the cusp of the 1-year anniversary of the PACT Act. If we do our jobs right at VA and reach as many veterans as possible, this could be the largest expansion of veterans benefits in history. And we're already seeing signs of that across the country. So we've done over 2,000 outreach events. Some of those outreach events have happened right here in this community because of the awesome team here, which means a lot to me. But we've replicated that in as many places as we can, in rural areas for veterans who live there, for tribal nations, for communities of color and historically marginalized groups of veterans, particular outreach to the LGBTQ plus community of veterans, and support for our fastest growing demographic of veterans who happen to be women veterans. The fact that you have such an impressive, dedicated team at a standalone clinic, which is rare in the VA, but really important for us to build trust and have a safe space for our women veterans. We've done targeted outreach to all of these groups because the charter that we have and the mission that we have is not to serve only male vets or white vets or only minority vets or only LGBT vets. It's all vets. That's who we're here for. And we had to be in every community to make sure we spread that message because these benefits can be incredibly impactful for people. We've expanded the number of deployment regions for Vietnam vets to be presumptively considered exposed to Agent Orange and the several conditions associated with Agent Orange. We've also added 2 new conditions to Agent Orange that are now presumptive. We've also added 300 conditions that are presumptively now connected to burn pit exposure for conflicts in Central Command that began in the first Gulf War all the way through the post 9/11 conflicts. We also have this cascade of doors that open with direct healthcare enrollment opportunities for veterans, to include one that will expire on September 30th, which is the 1-year enrollment period for veterans who separated more than 10 years ago after the post 9/11 conflicts. So in your outreach efforts, but also in your conversations with veterans in the community, your colleagues, talk about this and say, hey, if you separated before 2013 and you were in Iraq, Afghanistan, or really anywhere in Central Command, where burn pits are now considered presumptive, this is an opportunity to directly enroll in VA healthcare, regardless of whether there's a service connection. So please keep that window in mind. Please tell as many veterans as you can about that important window. But all of that said, this really represents a huge opportunity to bring in more vets into our system. And we've done that in the first year. We've brought over 100,000 veterans from what we called our PACT Act planning population. We used our data from DOD to come up with a list of veterans who we thought might qualify for the PACT Act. And that's not a small list, but we've enrolled more than 100,000 of them. We also enrolled more than 44,000 more veterans this year than we did last year. So this is having real impact. On top of that, for veterans who are newly enrolling, especially veterans related to the PACT Act, we are seeing over 50% of them fall under priority groups 1 through 3, the most generously covered group of veterans in our system. We cover their copays, we cover their travel, they qualify for long-term care, they qualify for a whole suite of benefits that veterans in lower priority groups cannot. And what the PACT Act does is it also offers an opportunity for our existing base of veterans to be screened for toxic exposures and then to have VBA reach out and say, please apply for further benefits, with the hope that they may increase in their priority groups and increase in their service-connected disability rating. All of that is already happening. It can happen even more. But a really important deadline, folks, is tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day for veterans who enroll in the PACT Act because of the PACT Act to have their benefits backdated to August 10th of last year, when the president signed the PACT Act into law. So we have 24 hours. Please go through all the channels that you can to make sure veterans are aware of that. They might not have that opportunity to get now almost a full year of compensation and benefits that they would have otherwise gotten. So last chance for us to tell veterans in the community about this. Please do if you can. All that said, between the PACT Act and between our demographics of veteran changing overall, veterans are getting older on average. Because of those dynamics, we know that demand for care in our system will continue to increase. And you should all really consider the 4-star rating that you have here from CMS to be an extraordinary accomplishment. This is a rating that every hospital gets, not just VA. We canned our own star ratings a few years ago, as you may remember. But we now have the same rating where we compare each other tit for tat with our competitors in the community. And 67% of our hospitals rate 4 or 5 stars, compared to only 41% of private sector hospitals. On top of that, 72% of our hospitals rated 4 or 5 stars on the patient experience star rating, compared to only about 50% of private sector hospitals. So no one's going to tell me that the private sector is better than VA when it comes to quality of care, because it's just not true. Study after study demonstrates that whatever you're looking at, we are at least the same, if not better. The challenge has always been access. I much more rarely hear veterans complain about the quality of care. What they mostly talk about when we're not meeting the mission is being able to access our system. The amount of time it takes for new patients in primary care to come in. Whether they get someone on the phone or not when they have a concern, when they call one of our call centers or call one of our clinics. Being able to get easy service and being able to be in front of someone who will go to the best extent that they can to serve what they need without saying, no, you walked through the wrong door, go talk to that person. That's not my job, right? These are the things I hear about most. And when veterans can't access the excellent care here, they get frustrated because they know, and we know, that this is the best option for them. And we have to do a lot to prepare for the wave of demand that's coming to us. I already talked about the PACT Act. That 100,000 number is just going to keep going up. These are new vets coming into the system. And again, folks are getting older. They're going to get more conditions. They're going to come to you more for care. And we have to build capacity. And the most important way we do that is by getting more people into the system. We have an excellent group of staff here. In almost every VA I visited across the country, the staff have demonstrated their willingness to go above and beyond. But what everybody has told me is that we need more people to be able to meet the mission. And so we've done that. We've hired more than 43,000 people since October 1st of last year into the system. That is the highest rate of external hires we've had in VA's history. And you've all delivered on that in a really impressive way. What we really need to work on is the time to onboard and hire, which is still much, much too long. Right now, we're at about 160 days median to get someone on board after we've made that decision. And we're talking about the best of the best because that's what veterans deserve. So we're trying to hire the best clinicians, the best frontline workforce in healthcare in the country. And if it takes us that long to bring them in and they have multiple offers, folks are just going to, at rates that are unacceptably high, say, look, I wanted to work for VA and serve veterans, but I got to start in my job, and they'll take another one. So what are we doing about that? We are rolling out, and we have rolled out, a new standardized single process for one way to bring in any given type of employee across the system. Before HR was moved to the VISN, it was a different way of doing things at every medical center. Now it's a different way of doing things at every visit. And I know that that moved because it didn't have the right change management associated with it. Lots of complex reasons did not work well. But what we can do now with the fact that we have 18 HR teams now instead of 170 is to standardize that process, make it more lean, and make it one way that we bring on people into the system. On top of that, we introduced the requirement to use USA Staffing, which is a single tool that allows for situational awareness of where packages are in the hiring process so that people can at least know where that nurse colleague or where that food service worker colleague is in the process so that they know what to expect. We're talking about our hiring managers and supervisors who absolutely depend on this process working well. So we don't know by when that's going to bear fruit, but I sure hope it bears fruit soon because we've been contending with long onboarding times for way too long. And that's the most important risk that I see in HR right now. But the fact is we've hired a lot of people, folks, and we're going to keep going because we need to prepare for what's coming. Veterans demanding care from our system, which is what we want. Every additional veteran we serve is better for the country. That's how much I believe in all of you and how much I believe in VA as the superior healthcare provider for veterans. So we're hiring people. We're also trying to expand our clinical space. This market continues to expand clinical space because you know that that's what veterans need. And the fact that you have a dedicated women's health clinic, like I mentioned, but also the fact that you're looking at multiple other opportunities to expand your footprint is really important. The PACT Act authorized 31 leases immediately and also funded them, thanks to the work of Ranking Member Takano and his colleagues in the House and our colleagues in our Senate committees. We got that through. And so that'll be really important because it allows us to accelerate the timeline through multiple different authorities to be able to open those new clinics. On top of that, we have exciting new authorities whereby we can work with our academic partners, but also our DoD partners to do joint leasing projects. So my head of operations and support for VHA is going to be out here in a few months to go to the March Air Reserve Base and see what opportunities might be available to serve the folks there, but also to have a joint leasing project that helps serve more veterans here. Again, all because of the exciting new authorities under the PACT Act to increase our clinical space. I just walked through your incredible dental clinic today. What an awesome team you guys have there. They don't have enough chairs. They're overloaded with demand because of how amazing they are. We need to keep bringing more space and infrastructure into the system. And so that's not going to stop. And then the third thing is a really hard thing, which is making sure that we are as efficient and effective as possible with the resources we do have. And that underlies everything you just heard about what we're trying to do with clinical productivity, what we're trying to do with bookability, and what we're trying to do to make sure the workload for this new veteran demand is equitably distributed. And so for the first time, we're setting standards on productivity and how we fill our schedules in every VA medical center to ensure that when this new care demand comes in, it's not just a couple of high performers that are taking on all of that load. That's just not consistent with our mission, which is to make sure that we fairly distribute that workload and prevent burnout. It's the best way for us to prevent burnout, is to be fair and make sure that everyone gets a fair shake on what they have to do for veterans every day. So if we do this right, we should be able to improve access. But we also know that more veterans are coming into the system. And so we have to think creatively about what our demands are going to be for productivity. The most important way to prevent burnout in the face of all of this is to bring more people into the system, which is why I started with hiring. If you have enough providers to meet the demand, you will not see burned out clinicians. As long as we have our workflows and processes and culture of teamwork stronger than we've ever had. So those are the challenges ahead of us. And we're going to be seeing, and you're going to be seeing, more from me about this in the next couple of months. But my fear is that if we don't expand our capacity now, if we don't invest in the direct care system now, we will just slowly look more and more like TRICARE. We will slowly look more and more like an insurance company. And that just can't happen. When we now have 38% of our care sent to the community, if that number starts to hit 43%, 45%, 50%, then our colleagues in Congress and VSOs are going to ask us, are you a healthcare provider or are you a payer for care? And we just can't get there. That's not a place where I'm willing to let the system go. I started by saying how amazing this system is for veterans. That's the reason to do it. Veterans are better served when VA is invested in, has enough employees, is more robust, has more space, and has more of a presence in every community that we can possibly reach. That is when veterans are best served. That's an expression of faith in all of you, but it's going to require work from all of us, more than 3,000 of you in this system and beyond, to dedicate ourselves to this and drive as much care into our system as possible. So the PACT Act provides that opportunity. It provides the door for more vets to get in and more vets to get more benefits, which is exactly what they've deserved for a long time. We have to do our jobs now and continue to build that capacity. And I look forward to doing that with all of you. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you being here. So we would really love for you, Team Communications, and of course, everyone on stage would love for you to ask questions. So we will start with our first.
All right.
You come up to them. There you go.
How you doing? My name's I live in the high desert. I love your speech about how you're helping vets out and all that sort of good stuff. But the vets up in the high desert have a hard time getting down here because, the desert coming down during the daytime is really hard in traffic. When I lived up north going through Mather and stuff, they had a system where people, they had vans going from Mather out to the PAC, picking people up at CPAC and bringing them in. Why don't you guys put something like that in here so the vets have an easier way to get down to their appointments instead of trying to drive down here?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So thank you for the question. I think transportation at all of our CBOCs is actually one opportunity that we have because we know that transportation is challenging and not every veteran's eligible for beneficiary travel either. And much of our specialty care is here in Loma Linda. So a majority of the primary care, 40% of it is at the CBOCs. We're looking at opportunities to expand our VTS program. Right now we have a certain distance around the medical center that our Veterans Transportation Service that's operated by HAS is running. But our goal eventually is to have that transportation service, having a van from each CBOC, bringing people to the medical center and then back to the CBOC at the end of the day. I've been at other medical centers. This is the 7th medical center I've worked in my 20-year career at the VA. So I know that this works, but there are also some inconveniences for patients. We got to make sure that we bundle the appointments on that specific day, and then they're here all day. So we need to make sure that they're prioritized, that they're not waiting long in clinics. There's a whole process that we have to build around this, but I appreciate you bringing that forward because that is something that's on our radar to expand, especially as we're working towards establishing more of VA leased buildings for our CBOCs with VA staff. We want to make sure that we have transportation options for veterans. I can tell you that our CBOCs that are currently contracted, we are authorizing veterans who are beneficiary travel eligible, who can't get an appointment at that CBOC, but can get an appointment here at the ambulatory care center for primary care. We are paying their travel from their home to the ambulatory care center and not the CBOC. So that's something that we're doing right now while we're challenged with some of the access issues and the issues we're having with our CBOCs that I think everyone is familiar with. But I appreciate the suggestion. That's absolutely something we're working towards in the future.
One more thing on travel. So travel's highly local challenge, and so I appreciate the director is focused on it. There are some things we can do from a national policy standpoint, though, and we used to have the authority when we had the public health emergency to use the rideshare program much more flexibly. So we used it about half of the time. We used it for homeless veterans to get them from place to place to coordinate their care, processing their voucher, getting from hotel to hotel if necessary, et cetera. We also used it though for vets just trying to get to their appointments. And so when the public health emergency expired, we lost that authority. We're asking Congress to restore that authority so that we can use it again. It was well within our budget. It was something that helped veterans across the country where we're able to use it. So that's one of our most important legislative asks. We're also just trying to make sure that where we do have beneficiary travel and veterans qualify for it, that we process those claims quicker. Something I hear about all the time and just heard about earlier today was the need for us to really just make sure that we're reimbursing vets who qualify for that. Again, it's only a subset of vets who qualify for beneficiary travel in the higher priority groups. We need to just continue to deliver on that where we have it, and then use other, options like if DAV, for example, has their transportation program here, VSOs have different things. We just need to canvass all of that and maximize their use. Thanks for the question.
So my biggest question and a common concern that everybody likes to bring up is the retention bonus. We want to know if we're losing the retention bonus and what the plan is to continue retaining our nurses since we still have a long time between position and onboarding.
Yeah, good question. I'll answer that from what we're doing on a policy standpoint. I've asked every network, Dr. Braverman knows this, your director knows this, to use as many of our PACT Act authorities as possible. So we have a lot of significant hiring authorities to include 50% R&R lump sum authority upfront from the day someone starts. We can now give that retention bonus. We also have critical skills incentives that expanded. We also have critical position pay. We have a bunch of ways for us to special salary rates, increasing the degree to which we can do that. We have a lot of ways that we can make the pay package much more attractive. And so, nurses, we got to really make sure we're competitive because you guys are in high demand everywhere. And I've asked everybody to maximize our use of those authorities, but go ahead.
Well, thanks for that question. Last year we had a great opportunity as an organization to help control the loss of staff because we really felt coming out of the pandemic there was a lot of burnout and there was a lot of opportunity out in the private sector, especially with nursing shortages, but professions across the healthcare system. And so we took that as an opportunity to offer retention pay to almost every VA Loma Linda employee. And I'm going to turn it over to our deputy ADPCS to specifically talk about some of the things that we've done with retaining the nursing staff specifically, because that's your question. Dr. Welp.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the retention bonus that we had last year was a little bit different for the nursing staff. It started at a little bit different time than it did for the rest of the staff. I'm not sure I'm using this mic very well. So for nurses, the retention period started May 8th. It caught up and actually got processed at the end of September when everybody else got processed, but then it ended because it was back paid and then it ended again on May 8th. One of the things that we recognized that we needed to be more aggressive with is our management of the locality pay schedules and making sure that those salary reviews were done timely, they were done every year, that we were really evaluating what we needed to evaluate when it came to the rest of the healthcare systems around us and whether or not our pay was equitable. So at the same time as that 10% retention bonus went in, we also increased wages just shy of 7%. So it was a 6.8% wage increase that was effective on that same date. And some people got those things mixed up a little bit, but you got both for the year. We just did LPS reviews again. And Ms. McCarthy and I have been through the schedules with Compensation Center of Excellence and are sending those proposals again forward for another significant increase for our nursing staff, because that's the way that process works for nursing staff. A little bit different for the rest of the organization, as you know, as wages change at the beginning of the calendar year. Ours catches up when it catches up. So there is another significant increase being proposed for nursing staff, which is now in your hands.
Well, first of all, finally, been a long day. Finally, I want to just thank you for your partnership with the union. You know, I feel like what we have here in Loma Linda is this shared vision of making sure that our staff are treated with dignity and respect, that they have a safe environment, and that we have equity across the board. And so I can tell you that we are committed to ensuring that we have continued equity for all of our staff, including the nursing staff. All right, Dr. Braverman, our network director.
Thank you. I just wanted to jump in real quick on the pay piece because we're doing something relatively unique in Vision 22. And that is that our directors in the Southern California facilities have agreed to compare salary rates across the whole Southern California area. Now, they may not be exactly the same in every facility, but the idea here is that when there's a need to increase one, we're going to look at increasing all. But the real point is that we don't want to generate a situation where we have employees who feel like they have to jump from one facility to another in order to make a few extra $1,000. So we want you to work where it's a great place to work, like here. We don't want you to work in my old facility at GLA because they're giving you a few extra $1,000 so you can drive an extra hour and a half to get there, right? But you know, that's something that we started earlier this year, and I think it's a good process. Over.
Thank you, sir. And they don't pay a few thousand more. We pay equally.
Our next
Great.
question.
My question has to do with the electronic health record.
Sure.
Can you tell us where we are with that and what the future of documentation looks like here at Loma Linda or at VA nationwide?
Yeah. So this has been quite a journey with the Cerner system, and started in 2020 when we rolled it out at a facility, and it went quite poorly. Still not at a level of functionality where we want it to be in the 5 sites that it's in now. So was deployed to 4 more sites since 2021, and didn't really go any better in the other sites. But we've learned some things along the way. The functionality has improved with some updates, but you know, ultimately the assessment of the program director for the electronic health record, Dr. Neil Evans, who, by the way, is a primary care physician who practices at the Washington, D.C. VA, and somebody who, you know, actually sees patients in the VA and knows what it's like and knows the differences between Vista, CPRS, and Cerner. He came to the conclusion as well that the system wasn't cutting it. So before we deployed to further sites, we had to reset how we were approaching this. And that's a combination of holding Oracle Cerner accountable to make the functionality changes needed, especially for patient safety, to make the workflows easier, to make it, you know, fewer clicks to do the same thing, similar to what we've done with Vista. But at the same time, we have to realize that this thing is not going to be Vista. This is not going to be CPRS. It is a commercial off-the-shelf system. And by the way, it's programmed with a modern programming language and is just much more sustainable into the future than Vista and CPRS are. That's just the reality. I actually hear mixed feedback. This feedback comes mostly from people who don't have the system yet, but they want a new system. A lot of people want a modern system that they're used to working with. Perhaps, you know, one of the 43,000 new people that we hired, chances are they worked at a different health system with one of these commercial off-the-shelf solutions. So, you know, Vista CPRS is an amazing system. It served its time. It's just not able to be updated in a sustainable way into the future. That's the harsh reality. And even though there's a lot of clinician satisfaction with it, because it's really the only EHR designed by and for clinicians instead of things like billing and administrative processes, we've had a lot of satisfaction with it. But we just have no choice but to get this right. And that's a combination of making system changes, but also looking at our workflows and processes and the way we deliver care and modifying those in a way that allows us to implement this thing. So we're still working that, and we're going to have a much more intensive presence at the 5 sites so that we can continue to fix this system and make it better. But that's the summary that I have now. Appreciate it.
My question stands from 24/7 operations. There's a lot of challenges and barriers to resources in the evening and knock shift. And going back to your speech regarding expanding access to care and having, the PACT Act approved, we should anticipate a high influx of new veterans coming. What is VA's goal, or what is VA's approach to providing those resources to the evening and the knock shift? Because here, this is a pretty rare event to just even have this type of event here at the evening shift.
Yeah. Look, it's a good question. I used to do evening town halls in the academic medical center that I ran before this job. And I discovered a lot of issues. And the fact that your director insisted that we have one, that I showed up to one, I think is a good testament to his investment in the night staff. And I think every good leader has to do that. We leave veterans in the care of all of you every day. And we have to figure out what the gaps are. The reality is that it's impossible to staff night shifts to the same degree that we staff day shifts. That's never going to be possible. The fact is, we need to get the resources needed for safe patient care. That's also not negotiable. So, my invitation to you is to make your voice heard on what resources are needed. And we have to just meet that gap one way or the other. You want to say something about this?
So I just want to go back to the point I made earlier, was that accountability is a two-way street. You're accountable to your supervisor, but your supervisor is also accountable to you. So if you need additional resources to provide safe, quality care, you need to make that known. We do have budget briefings that begin actually at the end of this week, tomorrow. And so there are services that are putting forward their budget requests for next year. And so I encourage you, especially Larry, if you know something now, if you haven't already shared that with Ms. Rudd and the HAS leadership team, please share that tonight before you're at the end of your shift. If after that you still have specific needs, I mentioned, just send me a message. I'm happy to come talk to you during your shift.
And we do have a question here on the Teams chat from Victor Villarreal. This question is, when will the mini C-Box open?
Thank you. I'm going to let Mr. Mancari, our Associate Director for Resources, talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mr. Saran. My name is Ryan Mancari. I'm the Associate Director for Resources. We are engaged in a project to bring on 5 mini CBOCs. A mini CBOC is a smaller facility that will house 2 to 3 primary care teams, limited specialty care, as well as telehealth capability. We have leased a facility in Hemet, and we are actively working through our facilities activation command team to make sure that the personnel, equipment, supplies, furniture, everything that we need is ready to go. We are in the almost there with our permits. We expect them back this week. Then we will engage in an active renovation with a goal of activating the clinic before the end of the calendar year. Anything before that would be a gift, but the end of the calendar year is the goal. We are still waiting on GSA delegation to be able to lease the other 4 facilities. These facilities are in Banning, Barstow, Desert Hot Springs / Palm Springs area, and Riverside. As soon as we receive that GSA delegation, we will be able to put forth a solicitation for building owners to be able to raise their hand and say, I have a facility that I'd like you to consider leasing. Then we'll be able to do the same activation command team process for those additional sites of care. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just want to commend Mr. Mancari leading that activations team. They meet every week, and they provide an update on Thursdays when we go over our transformational plan of care. So thanks for your leadership on that.
I have a special interest in EHRs.
Yes.
And I have one programmer who actually consults with me, and I tell them all the things that would make things easier for an actual user of the program rather than just, somebody thinking about it. And I was talking to one of the IT folks, and he suggested a sandbox where we could get a sense of the new system way before it ever arrives. Yeah. And I'm also curious if there's any possibility for VA people who are using the sandbox and also implementing the system to have direct access to the EHR programmers and the actual other company that's, providing it, if we could actually tell them what would be helpful for us and we could contribute to a better system.
Yeah, I think the idea is a really good one. We have a sandbox that already exists in the Cerner system where it's already deployed. And I think the idea would be, hey, can we extend that to clinical staff and non-clinical staff who need to use the system before it deploys? So I'll take that idea back to both the company and to Neil. We also plan on trying to use the simulation center in Orlando for more complex care simulation, because we haven't frankly deployed it in high acuity environments yet. So the surgery that we do in the 5 sites is really sort of ambulatory surgery. It's not complex surgery that requires extensive periods under general anesthesia, for example. So, don't have much experience doing higher acuity procedures with this thing. So we were thinking about using the Sim Center, but I like the sandbox idea, and we'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Although I would love to ask you guys a question, I would like to ask the interim network director a question in regards to his comment as far as working with all the visit directors and working on the salaries for all the nursing staff and things of that nature. Does that include wage grade employees? I know I have most of my services wage grade. I know supply chain also have wage grades employees as well as FMS.
So the coordination of salaries, if you will, applies to any occupation-wide increases that any of our facilities are recommending. So they may be wage grade, they may be SSRs for Title V, or Title V hybrids. They're for anything where one of the facilities wants to do an occupation-wide change, then that's being coordinated across all of the networks, or at least all of the facilities in our network. I can't speak to what the other ones are doing. Okay, you're welcome.
And if I may, Rocky, real quick. So Rocky DeBose is our chief of EMS. And when I started in 2019, the first 4 months, there were 2 OIG reports that came out regarding cleanliness and environment of care at via Loma Linda. And was it in 2020, we had our joint commission survey,
Yes.
our triennial. They had no environment of care findings. That's huge. And I'm just so proud of all the EMS staff, but also the leadership of EMS. And Mr. Bradford was here earlier. I see a couple EMS supervisors in the back. That is a testament to your leadership and the dedication of our EMS staff. One good housekeeper can prevent more infection than a room full of doctors and nurses. So thank you for your continued dedication to that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Also mentioned the CSI.
Our last question.
Yeah, so one other thing to add, later this summer, there'll be a CSI, a critical skills incentive for housekeepers. And there also recently was approved direct hire authority for housekeepers. So we're continuing to work through those processes for all of our employee occupations.
Thank you. Tracy, do we have any more questions online, perhaps?
No, I just checked. We do not. And that was the last question in person. So
Okay,
we're done with questions.
wonderful.
If anybody has another one.
Anybody have any final call for questions?
Actually, I have one online.
Yes, go ahead.
It's Tony Brown. I'm addiction therapist here at Loma Linda VA. And as an addiction therapist and a combat veteran with 35 years of service to both this nation and continued service to this facility, I'm wondering why we're still getting paid GS9 wages with the recent bonuses that were handed out to the other discipline, while me personally providing what I have been told is unmatched GS-13 type SUD mental health delegated responsibilities and services to some of the highest risk veterans in this catchment area. This staff, along with our community partners on a daily basis.
Tony, thanks for bringing that forward. I will actually have a meeting set up for you, our Chief of HR and our Associate Director for Resources, to review that series and see what we can do to get you appropriately compensated. Thank you, Tony. Any other questions online? Yes.
So, Dr. Elnahal, your comments about the electronic health record made me think about a unique challenge we're facing at VA Loma Linda. We don't have access to clinical documentation improvement software, CDI Pro, and we are unable to use facility funds to be able to procure it because of FITARA regulations. It has to be paid for by OIT. And we have gone through an unfunded requirements process, and our request, along with the request of 18 other facilities, was not prioritized high enough to have that program be funded for organization. We deem it to be critically important to our clinical operation. I'm wondering if you've been able to put any consideration, given the fact that the new EHR has been delayed and that functionality is not part of CPRS.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the question can be generalized even more to all the important things that didn't make the cut line in IT's budget. There's like, I can, if you want to be here for another couple hours, I can go through. So the process is limited by two things: IT service to the entire agency, whereby we have a vote, and it's a good weighted vote because of the fact that we have almost 400,000 people now in VHA, but also the much more limited IT specific appropriation that IT gets. They have a lot of sustainment demand for systems that we already use. So the things that we already use that we just can't afford to turn off and not maintain comprises the vast majority of what the IT budget goes to. And then we have a much more smaller chunk for the new stuff that we need. So we're going to keep making the argument as much as we can to our appropriators in Congress that we need more IT money. And I'm actually joining Kurt in that argument, knowing that a lot of what his team does, Kurt Delbenny, the Assistant Secretary for Information Technology, has everything to do with our ability to do our jobs. So that's an ongoing conversation, and we'll keep making the argument. All right.
Real quick, I just wanted to mention, because I know there's some ED staff that are either in the room or online. When we talk about improvements in our healthcare system, the improvements that have been made in our emergency department are phenomenal compared to where we used to be. And that is not something that neither one of us did. That's all performance and process improvement that you've done. Our left without being seen used to be in the 5th quintile, some of the worst in VA. Now we're in the 1st quintile. We have less than 2% of our patients that come to the emergency department leave without being seen. And that's a huge testament. So thank you for being engaged in performance improvement, looking at your area and owning it and saying, hey, you know what? We could do this better. And I mentioned accountability. Vertically, accountability is horizontal too. We can hold each other accountable as peers. So thank you for that great work. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Elnahal for some final words. And then I wanted to show one video for you guys.
Well, listen, you know, this is my second town hall today. I always learn something from these engagements. You're all an incredible team. And my only advice to you is think about what lies ahead in terms of our challenges, medium to long term, on building capacity. Ask yourselves what you can do to help build that capacity to treat and care for more and more veterans. And then my other piece of advice is just to support each other. my compliments that I've gotten from leaders and bosses and things like that, of course they mean something. But there's nothing like a pat on the back from somebody who does exactly the same thing that you do, because they have no other reason to do that unless they really think that you're awesome. And so that type of encouragement and team building and positive culture just goes such a long way. And at the end of the day, the veteran benefits from that. The stronger the team that we are, the better off the veterans we're serving. So that's my last piece of advice to you. Thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And so one of the things that we've done at our town hall meetings is to celebrate our staff's years of service. And so we have a small video to honor those staff members who in the month of August are celebrating their anniversaries. That's awesome. I did some quick math while that was scrolling. That's 440 years of VA experience on that screen. And then finally, yesterday, Dr. Elnall had the opportunity to meet with two of our inpatients, one on 2 Southeast and one on 4 Southeast as well. And some of the compliments he got from those patients was regarding our cardiology program. And so our cardiology department and our medical media have been working on a cardiology spotlight. And this is just the first of a series we're going to do to share the awesome care that we're providing here on VA Loma Linda. And I just want to share this with you to close this out. If you'd please run the video. Thank you.
One of the things that I feel is unique about our hospital and our cardiology team is that the reason why people are here is because they are serving the veterans. We all have a common goal, and a lot of people are here because they are passionate about the health of the veterans, that they want to take care of them, they want to make them better. And it's more like a community, actually.
We're hardworking and we're a good team. So we work seamlessly together to provide patient care. And again, we all have the same mindset that we do what's right for the patient. We all take time to say, you know what, veteran comes first. What can we do that's veteran-centric? And so I appreciate that our whole department sort of lives that motto.
the fact that we can maybe take part in helping them overcome some of these challenges, especially with their medical conditions, it's a privilege to be able to do that.
There was a time when a patient just was confused as to where they were supposed to go and what they needed to do, if they needed labs. And, I just took the time to look through their chart, explain to them, this is what you need to be doing, this is what needs to be done, this is where you need to go, this is the time you need to arrive. And they were like, are you this helpful with everybody?
It's a good feeling because we continue to serve our brothers and sisters. I spent 22 years of my life in the Army and really helping for a cause, and all this is really just an extension of that mission to help, to talk to them about what's happening, and actually in some instances to be right there by their side while they're getting these tests.
We are fortunate to have some of the best subspecialists, really.
The care is very coordinated. We're always talking to each other, obviously we share mutual patients in terms of the different kind of expertise that we have. So we're always sharing the information that we have to enhance the care of the patient. So I think that's a big plus.
They know that they're getting providers and physicians who are well educated in terms of the developments within cardiology. We have access to good techniques, but also I think we really are able to excel in terms of ethical decision-making and ethical practice. We want to do only what's in the best interest of the veteran each and every day.
The VA will always be here for you. And I tell this to every one of my veterans, right? Veterans have done their service. These are benefits they are entitled to. So the office visits, the medications, the diagnosis testing, these are all benefits they are entitled to. Now, for a number of reasons over the years, veterans have gone out to the community. But one thing I can tell my veterans wholeheartedly without doubt is that the VA will always be there for them.
I'm so proud of our cardiology department, but I'm proud of every member of our team in VA Loma Linda. Thank you, Undersecretary for Health, Dr. Elnahal. Thank you, Congressman Takano, and thank you, Dr. Braverman, for spending the day and a half with us. And I wish you all a very great evening. Thank you, everybody.